Hmm.
Aisha's age.
Age of Aisha. Excellent. I have a longer video on this, so you can watch that for more details, but I'll give a brief answer. Regarding the age of Aisha radiallahu anha, there is nothing in the Quran about it. There's no verse in the Quran that discusses her age. There's nothing from the Prophet, peace be upon him, where he mentioned her age. There's no hadith we call marfu', yani where the Prophet, peace be upon him, said about her age. We do
Mhm.
have narrations from her, and we have some in Bukhari, and we have some in Muslim. And there are some discrepancies between those narrations. And not, okay, again, like I want to be very clear. I'm not denying those narrations because they are authentic. But what does that mean? That the chain of narrators do go back to her and she made certain statements. The one in Sahih Muslim, for example, it mentions that she was 7 at the age of engagement, where the engagement took place, and she was 9 at the time of the actual consummation of marriage. The one in Bukhari, one of them, and another one in Sahih Muslim mentioned 6 and 9, and so on. So, and these are authentic narrations. Imam Muslim has Sahih Muslim. The most famous explanation is called Sharh of Sahih Muslim by Imam An-Nawawi. Imam An-Nawawi, a later scholar,
Mhm.
but still a very classic scholar. He discusses the differences, why different ages were given, and so on. So this is not something we're rewriting history with or something. Rather, what we do know is that ages were not well kept at that time because there was no calendar. Like imagine if I asked her age, but there was no date. There was no 1990, 1980, 2000, none of that, right? Basically, the Arabs would go by the events of a year, like the year of the elephant, where the elephants attacked Mecca or so on.
Right.
When they would have certain events, they would kind of remember dates from that. That's why many of the companions, even Khadija, the first wife of the Prophet, peace be upon him, we have different opinions about her age at the time of marriage, ranging from 25 and 28, which is more authentic, to all the way to
Mhm.
40. It's
40,
a
right?
big
Yeah.
range. Yeah. The narration for 40 is actually a weak narration, but you find it
Mm.
in most of the history books. But the point being, until the Hijri calendar began in the time of Umar, meaning after
Mhm.
the death of the Prophet, ﷺ, after the death of Abu Bakr, and the time of Umar, the first Muslim calendar developed, the Hijri, which we still use today.
Mhm.
So, how would she really know her age? Why did she give two different ages? Probably because this was an estimate based on what people told her. It doesn't mean that she's a weak narrator. She's a very strong narrator of hadith. She's amazing. But obviously, she wasn't present minded at her own birth, right? Meaning, if you ask me my age, I'm going to ask somebody like my mom or check my passport or my birth certificate. Well, if you don't have a passport or a birth certificate, not even a year numbering system, then basically you're going to rely upon other people, older sister. Hey, when was I born? Well, I think you were born around this 8 years. You're about this age. It's going to be an approximate. And there are
On that
some
note,
narrations.
even my father's generation, he doesn't exactly know when he was born. It's an estimate as
Exactly.
well, and that's just one generation back in Macedonia.
Exactly. I mean, even if you look at a lot of the Somali citizens that we have in America today, all
Right.
of their birth dates are January 1st. I don't know what happened 9 months before January 1st, but somehow they're because they didn't in Somalia, they didn't really care. It didn't really matter to them. And when they came here, they just kind of put that as their birth dates. So the point being, that's not really something in the Quran, or it's not a part of the Islamic belief, aqidah, as we say. It's not something the Prophet, peace be upon him, told us. So this whole big deal that has been made is just trying to distract. What we do know of authentic hadith that she was already engaged at that time. So that means in the Arabian society, whatever age she exactly was, it was the age that girls would usually get engaged, and they would wait till they were physically capable of bearing children, which usually would be indicated through haid, which is the menstrual cycle, which is the natural way of letting you know a woman is ready, and then they would go ahead and consummate the marriage. So that was society of that time, and that was correct. And none of the pagans, none of the enemies of Islam ever objected to that marriage as unusual for that society. So
Right.
now let's talk about recent time. My grandmother was married at 14. My
Mhm.
other grandmother from other side was married at 12, right?
Yeah.
And that is just like I said, and like you said, it's very recent. Now,
Mhm.
today in America, we would find that unacceptable, right?
Mhm.
But it is incorrect for us to judge history by our standards, right? Because
Absolutely.
today, why do we not have girls get married at 14 and 15, for example, is because they
Yeah.
got to finish high school and they want to go to
Mm.
college. Yeah, that's true. But in a society where you don't have high school, you don't have middle school, you don't have elementary school, you don't have colleges, you don't have universities, once a boy is physically capable, he gets married. Once a
Yes.
girl is physically, naturally indicative that she can produce children, she gets married. That's how
Yes.
that society runs. So the marriage of Aisha was at an age that was perfectly acceptable for the society of that time. Whether she was 9 at the time when they actually consummated or older, as her older sister, some of the narrations mention, doesn't really matter. What
Mm.
matters is that she was of the right age for marriage for that society. We have in America many presidents that got married to girls that were underage according to our standard of 18 today. We
Yes.
have Elvis Presley
Elvis
married
Presley.
a younger
Yeah.
girl. You have, I mean, if you go to Europe, all your kings, right?
Yeah.
And since we're on the subject, you know, how old was Rebecca according to biblical references when she got married in the Bible? 3, right? So
Mm.
I'm just saying that if David Wood or any of the Islamophobes want to be just and honest about it, well, according to majority of the biblical scholars, Mary was about 12 when she got married. They might come back, oh no, 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 Mary's age is not in the Bible. Well, Aisha's age is not in the Quran, radiallahu anha,
Right.
right?
Fair enough.
But
Yes.
if you go to any historical references like the Catholic Encyclopedia and others, they will mention that she was around 12 to 14 years of age. And Joseph, according to those references, was around 90 at the
Mm.
time.
Yeah.
And, they had sexual intercourse afterwards, as most references will mention. And, she was married to him at that age. Now, today, that would not be acceptable. But then people say, oh, no, 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 that society, that's when Jewish girls would get married. Okay,
Hmm.
well, then Arabian society, that's when Arabian girls would get married.
Right, right. Yeah, I just want to point out the hypocrisy again here in the West. If you look into what teenagers do, everybody knows it. It's an open book. When they hit
Right,
puberty, they go out partying, they have promiscuous
right.
sex, teen pregnancy, etc., etc. So this is nature. This is God showing you that the bodies are fully functioning.
Yeah,
And instead of using it productively, like your grandparents in that case, they use it absolutely in the wrong way
I
and
agree.
end up, yeah, never married, single mom household, whatever, right?
There's
So
a
what's good
there's
about
a
that?
school in San Diego. I used to be a teacher's assistant when I was going to college in that school, and
Mm,
they have a daycare for the girls, and it's a middle school, right?
okay.
That means sixth, seventh, eighth grade.
Hmm.
And I remember there was a 12-year-old girl that had a child
Yeah.
in that school. Now imagine that means she was sexually active at 11 or under, right?
Yeah.
And nobody considers that to be an illegal act here in America today, right?
Hmm.
She did it. She's not in
Yep.
jail. Her boyfriend that she had the child with is not in jail, right?
Right.
If that is okay for people to have sex at that age, then why wouldn't they get married at that age? If they're ready for it, right?
Absolutely.
In Islam, we have books of fiqh jurisprudence, and what those books like Al-Mughni, Al-Majmu'ah, they tell us is marriage has to do with physical readiness and mental capability of a person. Meaning, if
Hmm.
you're in a society where through menstrual cycles or whatever else, you are ready, and that's not the only thing. There are other indicators that can be taken for sexual intercourse, and you want to get married at that age, we cannot say, no, you cannot, right? Because
Right.
if you don't have, like some societies, the average lifespan is around 30 years of age. And
Hmm.
even till today, it's interestingly. And if that is true, and you tell somebody you have to wait to be 21 to get married,
You have to study
how are they,
first.
who's going to raise the kids, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's going to, like, by the time you're 10, your parents are dead.
Right.
Right. And in
Yeah.
earlier societies, you had certain things like that as well.
Sure.
So, you know, in accordance to a society of that sign, and this is why none of the polytheists, none of the Jews or Christians or atheists or anybody else in that society ever objected to that marriage because that was the
Hmm.
norm of society.
Makes sense.